The family and friends of the 8 victims of Bruce McArthur are getting their chance to describe their loss. One by one, in a Toronto court, they're reading about the impact the serial murderer has had on their lives. All of this after the court heard new details about how the murders took place in a lengthy statement of fact. Now, warning, some of what you are about to hear is very disturbing. The CBC's Stephanie Skandaris is outside the University Avenue Courthouse with the latest. So, Stephanie, let's start with the victim impact statements. Tell us what you're hearing.
Andrew, I've been going in and out of the courtroom here in Toronto, and I have to tell you, it's really hard to hear what people are saying about their loved ones who were murdered by Bruce McArthur. Family and friends speaking, there are long pauses, there are lots of tears. We're anticipating 21 statements in total. 13 of them will be read aloud, some people reading for themselves, some reading on behalf of others. We're expecting those 13 will get through them all today. I can tell you a little bit about what people are saying. I've been making some notes. A friend of Skandaraj Navaratnam describing him as, great at Scrabble, irreplaceable to his friends and family. The family of Salim Essen described him as kind and generous. One of the really emotional moments we just heard, Andrew, a Crown attorney tearing up as he read a statement from the daughter of Dean Lissawick. You may remember he was the man he lived in and out of shelters. He was the one who was never declared missing. The daughter said she didn't really have contact with her father, but she always wondered where he was. She wondered, maybe he's somewhere good, but what happened to him was worse than she could ever imagine. She says when she heard what happened, it didn't feel real. She never knew her father. She thought there would be a chance that she would be able to meet him and talk to him. Now there's no way to know what could have been. She said she has a child, another baby on the way. One day they will ask her about her father, and she'll have to tell them about how he was taken away from the world. We've heard many statements from Andrew Kinsman, from friends and family and community members who worked alongside him. He was very well connected to the LGBTQ community here in Toronto. His sisters described him as generous, thoughtful, compassionate. They talked about the impact this has had on them. They say they find it difficult to sleep. One says she lies awake at night thinking about his death. They're less trusting now. They say that a wonderful man has gone from the world, murdered by him, pointing at Bruce McArthur, but she said, we never say his name. Another statement Andrew will hear at some point today will be a community statement from an advocate for Toronto's gay village community. He talked to CBC News and told us about what he said in his statement. Have a listen to that.
It was a community impact statement that we submitted as ASAP, the Alliance for South Asian AIDS Prevention, not a victim impact statement specifically. So we spoke about how this has really troubled the community, especially, and I went right back to 2010 and 2012 to talk about how Middle Eastern and South Asian men went missing and how now it's left an aura of distrust within the community of people and dating and relationships, and talking about the mental and physical strains that it has put on people. People are hesitant to go out to meet people, date. There's a lot of depression, anxiety that comes in. So, and we've been offering a lot of these spaces for people to come in and share some of their thoughts and feelings. And so that's what we use to put into our community impact statement.
Now, Bruce McArthur is in this courtroom, Andrew. He's listening to all of these people describe the impact of his crimes. From what I can see, just the back of his head, he seems to be staring straight ahead. He's wearing the same clothes he's worn before in courtroom appearances, a plaid shirt under his sweater. But as I said, just staring straight ahead as people, sometimes speak to him, sometimes won't even look at him. At some point, the judge here will have to decide how to sentence McArthur. We know that murder carries an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. McArthur committed 8 murders, so the judge will have to decide whether to sentence him consecutively or concurrently. If it is consecutively, well, he won't be able to apply for parole for 200 years, Andrew.
And earlier, the court heard more about the murders themselves. What new details emerged there, Stephanie?
Well, those were some gruesome details that we heard earlier this morning, Andrew. We heard details about how McArthur knew his victims and when and how he killed them. We also heard about what police found when they searched his apartment. That included dozens of photos that McArthur took after the men were deceased, how he staged them, some similarities there. The court heard about how McArthur kept a file on each of his 8 victims containing sometimes, missing persons posters or news articles about the case. He also kept mementos of the men that he killed. That included, for instance, a bracelet belonging to Skandaraj Navaratnam, a necklace belonging to Dean Lisowick, a notebook from Salim Essim, things like that. We also heard details about how police cracked this case, how they eventually tracked down McArthur, placed him under surveillance, found his DNA and the DNA of some of his victims in his abandoned van, and then we heard about his eventual arrest after police rescued a man who escaped from a terrifyingly similar situation with McArthur. You know, Andrew, some people want a full-on inquiry into why it took so long to catch McArthur, how he was able to go on killing men for 7 years. That would be up to the province of Ontario. That would be the Premier and the Attorney General. We know that won't happen until these legal proceedings are over.
Stephanie, thank you. That is the CBC's Stephanie Skandaris live in Toronto. We've been following developments today with Jordana Goldlist. She is a criminal defense lawyer based here in Toronto and has handled several murder cases. And Jordana, obviously this is very emotional, right, for friends and family to make these statements. What do you think it means for them, and what kind of weight does a judge give to them typically?
Well, hopefully to the family and friends it means some sense of closure, especially when this is carried on for so long and they've been carrying this anger, this guilt, this hurt. And so for them, it gives them an opportunity to tell the judge more about their loved ones than, of course, the agreed statement of facts give us as the public. And so the judge takes all of this into consideration. He needs to consider not only what is a fit sentence given the gravity of the offense, but also sends a message to the community that they are to be kept safe by the justice system.
And you're a defense lawyer, so you have defended people who have been accused of murder.
That's right.
Who've been convicted of murder.
That's right.
What kind of impact do these statements have on the accused sometimes? Does it vary?
Absolutely, it varies. I mean, it depends on the circumstances of the offender. So, you know, in cases where it's a crime of passion or someone is acting out sort of for the benefits of a gang and they're not so closely connected to the murder itself that it gave them some sense of gratification, it impacts them. It gives them a different view of what they had participated in or what crime they had committed. For others, no, it doesn't impact them at all. It doesn't affect them. I mean, the reality is if someone is seeking gratification from taking a life, they probably aren't fazed by the other lives that this has impacted.
After all the statements are in,
Yes.
the Crown and defense have their say. Does the judge typically move to sentencing right away, or instead would the justice take some time in preparing a sentencing statement?
It depends case to case. Here there is a lot to consider in terms of the volume of evidence being led at the sentencing hearing, but the issues in front of this judge are only one, right? Should the sentences be consecutive or concurrent? And so the law on that is very well versed. There's not much for him to research. There's not very much for him to consider other than the message he's going to send to the public.
We are in a very public phase, right, of this hearing, the sentencing, but is there something that we don't see in terms of the pre-trial discussions that typically happen in cases such as this?
Yes, absolutely. And we know that Bruce McArthur had a trial date set. In order for that to happen, there would have been what's called a judicial pretrial. And so it's a meeting in a conference room between the judge, the Crown attorney, and the defense lawyers to talk about the case, what the issues are for trial, if there exists any, how long the trial will take, and then you discuss whether or not there's any prospect of resolution, which is the guilty plea. And so Justice McMahon would have already, I assume, pre-tried this, which means would have known the details of the case that you and I are just learning as the statement of fact is read in, would have been aware of what the issues were. We know that he was provided with the victim impact statements in advance. So this is not new to him per se, and it would have been canvassed in advance.
And McArthur will be given a chance to address the court. If you were his counsel, would you advise him to do that?
I don't know Bruce McArthur,
Yep.
so I don't know what impact he would have. I have clients who are articulate and apologetic and remorseful, and I encourage them to speak.
All right, Jordana, thank you.